we need to talk about one controller in particular that's completely changed how I look at controllers. This is the 8BitDo Ultimate 2C Wireless. Out of every controller that I've used, this has far exceeded my expectations. Let's hop in and talk about the 8BitDo Ultimate 2C Wireless and why I think it's the controller you should be picking up. Without further ado, let's just hop right in. As with all my reviews, the company is not seeing the video beforehand. They have no input in what I say, and I'm just going to give you guys my honest thoughts to what I think about it. Now, what makes this controller in particular special compared to other controllers, especially around that price point? While this controller has a lot of functionality and it can be used on a lot of different devices, this is advertised as Windows and Android, but it should work on Switch as well. We also have a lot of different modes here. You can use this in 2.4 GHz, Bluetooth, or of course USB. But what are the other specifications of this controller and why do I think it's worth picking up over the competition? Let's hop over to their website and take a closer look. You can tell right off the bat, this is designed to be a budget-oriented controller, but it comes with a lot of high-end features. You can pick this up on their website for $26.99. That's a hell of a price for what they're offering. You get a lot of different colors. Like the mint one here, there's peach, green, purple, blueberry, and brown. However, the one that I like the most is their Wukong Special Edition, and I'll show you why. It looks incredible in person. Now, when I said this has a lot of extra features that high-end controllers have, this is exactly what I meant. You're getting 1000 Hz polling rate. You're getting some extra bumpers that you can use to program a whole bunch of different other things. One of the biggest features that I like about this controller is that it has 1000 Hz polling rate. This means that this controller in particular is very responsive. And if you're looking at latency wise, this actually scores pretty much near the top of the list. 1000 Hz only works over 2.4 GHz or of course wired. You get durable Hall effect joysticks and triggers. This means that there's no contact pad underneath, so this should last quite a while. This also means that because these are using Hall effect, you're unlikely to get drift with this controller anytime soon. You also get a mode switch button, and there's turbo functionality, as well as some pretty decent rumble, with a really comfortable grip. So let's hop back over and take a closer look at the controller itself. So what do you get inside the box? Let's open one and take a closer look. I think we should look at this Wukong Special Edition just because of how nice it looks. In the box, you get a USB-A to USB-C cable, the 2.4 GHz USB dongle, of course you get a manual, and the controller itself. Look how nice this thing looks. This is a fantastic design for a controller. Wow. Their USB dongle is also really good quality. This is what we're going to be using for most of these tests that I'm going to run with it. It's worth noting as well, unlike the KK3 Max from GullyKit, I haven't had any cutouts using this so far. Taking a quick look at the controller itself, you get some nice analog triggers, some clicky bumpers. These aren't too clicky. I'm not really a fan of clicky bumpers in general, but they're nice and they work well. You get some rubber membrane face buttons. There's a good amount of travel to them. They're not too loud either. I actually really like these. And you get a nice rubber membrane D-pad. This is a little unique compared to a lot of other D-pads that I've looked at. It almost feels like there's little switches under here, and that makes it much more responsive. Because the triggers also use those, this makes this much more responsive too. The joysticks also have a really nice rubber cap to them. They have a silver stem and there's some red on the bottom, with a matte black coating on the joystick caps. The top has a slightly transparent frosted matte black coating to it. There's almost a texture to it, and that makes it very resistant against fingerprints. You can also see that really cool Wukong style design on it. There's a little bit of that design in the center here too. Looks really nice. Starting things off with a quick overview of the controller, you have your face buttons, of course, they're Xbox styled, and the rubber membrane is mentioned. You got your D-pad down here on the bottom. It's a really good position for it too, and it feels very comfortable to use. It also has a really nice pivot. Your two joysticks are positioned like most 8BitDo controllers, and they're really smooth. They have a really high quality anti-friction ring. These are some of the smoothest joysticks that I've seen on a controller. You get your start and select buttons up here on the top, and the button in the center to turn it on. You also get a star button here and a square button, as well as the pairing light. On the top, you get the two bumpers, which are clicky as mentioned. You got those really good analog triggers and the pairing button itself, as well as the USB-C port for charging. On the back, you don't really have anything, but you can see a lot of this texture. This makes this controller really comfortable to hold on to. There's also a mode switch in the center that swaps between the 2.4 GHz mode and Bluetooth. I've been using this exclusively as my controller, and I've been using the 2.4 GHz mode. I haven't had any cutouts or interruptions in my gameplay. Fantastic connectivity for a controller. So let's take a deep dive into some of the controls and how they feel on this controller in particular. Let's start off with these buttons. As mentioned, these are rubber membrane. There's not a lot of wiggle to these, but they don't rub on the shell. 8BitDo did a fantastic job on this controller. They have a shiny glossy coating to them, but it doesn't really show your fingerprints. All in all, excellent face buttons. They have a nice amount of travel too, and they stick just ever so slightly out of the controller. The buttons are excellent. As far as the D-pad goes, this is probably one of the better D-pads that I've used. There's a little bit of a click when you push it down, but it doesn't really bottom out. The edges ever so slightly flare out, but this does feel really quick and very responsive. Excellent D-pad. The joysticks, in my opinion, are one of the big highlights of this controller, along with the design. Let's zoom in a little bit more so you can see what these look like. There's a nice rubber grip on the edge of these joystick caps, and a nice concave cap. This lets your thumb sit nicely into place when you're playing on this. These also have some of the best anti-friction rings that I've seen on a controller. These are extremely smooth. I cannot put into words how smooth these joysticks feel. There's no odd clicks or anything of the sort on these joysticks. You also have L3 and R3 functionality. It has a nice hollow click to it. Because these are Hall effect, and with these anti-friction rings and metal stems, I think these joysticks should last a long time. Triggers on this one are pretty interesting. They're ever so slightly narrower than most controllers. Unlike the KK3 Max, that has a little bit of grips and wider triggers, these are really narrow. However, I don't really see this as a bad thing. Even when you push these down, they don't really bottom out. They don't sound clacky, and they still sound high quality. They also have a nice range of motion. Not a lot, but not too little. This is a good middle ground for a trigger. I think you'll be pretty happy with these. Those bumpers are also really decent too. You can press them from any direction and it doesn't feel different. There's a little bit more pressure the further you go up, but it's not too bad. Despite me not liking switches, this doesn't actually bother me either. They're clicky, but they're not too clicky. The R4 and L4 bumpers are also clicky, but they're a little bit quieter than these bumpers up here. So as far as ergonomics go, how do they feel on this controller? Well, honestly, this is still one of the better controllers that I've used for ergonomics. I think the KK3 Max, because it's ever so slightly wider and flares out, is a little bit more comfortable. Honestly, at this point, I'm just kind of nitpicking. These are all comfortable controllers. This is kind of a more squished controller, so your hands kind of sit closer to the center. It's not bad though, and I don't think it's going to bother a lot of people. Unless you have really big hands, this should be a great controller for ergonomics. My hands grip comfortably on this controller, and I honestly love this texture on the back. It doesn't look like a lot of texture, but it does really add quite a bit. While I'm on the back, I think we should talk about the build quality. Build quality on this controller is fantastic. There's no molding issues with the plastics whatsoever, and the textured black coating does a really good job at resisting fingerprints. The controller itself doesn't feel hollow. It's got a good weight to it, and it feels really solid. Definitely gets a thumbs up for me. Fantastic build quality, excellent controls. It's also a really good weight. It doesn't feel too light, but it doesn't feel too heavy. This comes in at 221.2 grams. It's a really good middle ground. By comparison, the KK3 Max feels much heavier at 252.6 grams. I like the extra weight on this controller, but the trade-offs on this controller don't make it worth it for me over the 8BitDo Ultimate 2C Wireless. This feels like a really good balance of portability, comfort, build quality, and ergonomics. How does the polling rate feel on this controller? It should be 1000 Hz. That's what they've advertised. Let's give it a quick test and see what this controller pulls at. I'm going to use this test here from GamePad in particular just because it lets me select the controller. The one I had before only picked up the Legion Go controllers. We're going to use this top one, which is the 8BitDo Ultimate 2C, the Wukong one that we're using. So let's go ahead and select that. Then I'm going to select the amount of polling tests. I want a good average, so I'm going to go with 4000, which is number 2. then I just need to select the choice. We're going to go for the left joystick, but I accidentally pressed enter, so I think it automatically defaulted to the left joystick anyways. Next, let's just go ahead and try rotating this joystick and see what we get. You can honestly tell this is a fast controller already. Look at that, wow. So this is kind of interesting because the test that I ran before would always be 1000 Hertz. I'm not sure why this is limiting it to 500 Hertz at the moment, but it's 115% stable. That is a stable controller. The jitter is pretty interesting too. It's under 1 millisecond. That's actually not bad. It could also be this adapter limiting it to 500 Hertz. Let's try again. Yeah, so this was just a bad sample, I think. The polling rate max is 1000 Hertz, but the average is about 600. So it's not too bad, but it is really responsive. Essentially what you want is low jitter, and we're looking at under 1 millisecond for both of these tests. This is pretty close to 1 millisecond average latency as well at 1.6, so it's not bad. But anything between 600 to 1000 is going to feel pretty much instantaneous anyways. These are all really nice controllers. All in all, pretty decent results. I'm going to run this test again on my editing rig just to see what kind of results I get there. Got this on my editing rig. I'm going to go ahead with that 4000 samples again. Let's do that left joystick and let's go ahead and test it. This is pretty much the same as what we were doing before. Looking at roughly 600 Hertz with 1000 Hertz max. Low jitter, of course, under 1 millisecond, and the average latency is about 1.5 milliseconds. Still not bad. This is honestly going to depend a lot on which USB port you plug it into and what's by it, because it is wireless, so that could interact a little bit with the stability. Not a bad controller at all. I'm still really impressed with it. So the next thing I think we should look at is some real-world gaming. How does it feel on a device like the Legion Go or just in general? And how does 600 to 1000 Hertz translate in game? Let's load up the game that I like to test latency with, which is Skull the Hero Slayer. My latency tests aren't really that scientific. I just go here, press a button, and I'll give you my honest thoughts to how responsive it feels. So let's press that button down and see what it looks like. Pretty responsive. I do notice input latency more than probably a lot of people, but to me anyways, this basically feels instantaneous. Yeah, pretty damn responsive. The D-pad actually feels really nice too for this game. Let's check out for false diagonals. I'm gonna push down here and then just rock left and right. Yeah, so you do get some false diagonals with this. It is a really nice D-pad though. Honestly, that doesn't really bother me for gaming. Turbo is pretty easy to set up. Just press the star button and press the button that you're trying to turbo with. Now I can just hold down the X, so it's pretty easy. Honestly, I think this is a great little controller. I think this is why I've kind of stuck to using this controller as my primary controller versus a lot of other ones. You get that fast, responsive gameplay that you're always needing in games like this. I really don't have much complaints with this controller. We're honestly getting to a point now where controllers just feel so decent, it's really hard to find anything to complain with. So what are my final thoughts on the 8BitDo Ultimate 2C Wireless? Well, I honestly think this is an amazing controller, especially this Wukong version. You get a really solid 2.4 GHz USB dongle. Again, this hasn't cut out on me once, which is more than I can say about the Gully Kit one. Fantastic connectivity, build quality is excellent. The plastic again is great at resisting fingerprints. I honestly don't have many complaints with this controller. The joysticks feel really smooth, they have a nice rubber cap, there's a lot of range of motion, it's fast, quite responsive, the face buttons are really good. Guess just for me personally, maybe these bumpers. I don't really like clicky, but they're not too loud, so it's really hard to complain about them. You get good triggers too. I don't mind these narrower triggers, but some people might want that longer trigger and a wider trigger base in general, like the one that you see on the Gully Kit. These are definitely a lot wider, but there's a lot of trade-offs for this controller versus the 8BitDo Ultimate 2C. This is also much more expensive. So in a way, I think this is this controller's biggest competitor. Out of every controller that I've reviewed, this is currently my go-to and my favorite. The design, the functionality, the connectivity, great controller, and honestly, solid thumbs up from me. Which controller do you like? Let me know in the comments below. What's your go-to? As of this moment, this is a strong recommendation for me to buy. If you're in the market for a controller, I don't think you're going to be disappointed with the 8BitDo Ultimate 2C Wireless. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you like this controller? Did you already buy it? And has it been working well for you? As always, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks for watching.